we're not of the opinion that AI is replacing the sales rep or humans in terms of what they do. We think it's giving them superpowers to focus on the things that really matter, which are relationship building. And so I do think the seller of the future is armed with Letter AI as their AI companion, their AI super powered assistant, and they're spending as much of their time as possible building those relationships and driving empathy with their user base.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to What's Next, Stories of Industry Reinvention by TechNexus Venture Collaborative. I'm Jim Dallke, Director of Communications here at TechNexus, and today I'm thrilled to welcome Letter AI CEO Ali Akhtar to the program. Ali, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here, Jim. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, 2025 was a big year for Letter AI. You guys raised your 10.6 million Series A in October. The founding CRO of HubSpot joined the board, and some blue chip customers like Lenovo, Adobe, and more flocked to your AI sales enablement platform. Ali, give us the high level overview of what Letter AI does and the problem that you guys are solving for customers.
Yeah, if I were to put it in one sentence, Letter AI helps teams win more, win better, win faster. So breaking that down a little bit, Letter provides globally distributed revenue teams with the content that they need and the language that they need it in their time of need, personalized to the unique customers and opportunities that they're pursuing. We help them with training, coaching, onboarding, and AI role play, allowing them to spin up customers that look and feel and resemble the kinds of conversations that they're having day in and day out. And by the way, those AI simulations go beyond mock customer interactions, but can also be, a product expert or a direct report that they're talking to or a manager conversation. And so there's all sorts of different ways to get leverage out of that role play. And then, of course, we give, buyer engagement and deal cycle optimization capabilities to our customers as well. So they can share content externally. They can get ready-made insights that help them essentially figure out how to best navigate different opportunities, both as, they're making their way through the pipeline and post-closing those opportunities. So that is, in just a few words, what Letter does.
Yeah, superpower for sales folks. I love it, and it feels like such a ripe piece of the market that AI hasn't touched really yet, that you guys are really filling a niche for. Talk about your background and how it kind of led to the aha moment for the creation of Letter AI. Was there a specific moment, in your background where you looked at the sales enablement process and the PDFs and the training and the battle cards and realized, hey, the model is broken rather than just inefficient?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my background is in AI across a variety of different roles. I've started off in consulting at McKinsey doing AI related work predominantly, then joined a company named Samsara, now publicly traded IoT company, where I was leading AI from an engineering perspective. Chicago-based startup after that called Project 44, where I was heading up a product vertical focused on AI-related products and features. And both at Samsara and at Project 44, I had hands-on experience with some of the legacy enablement platforms. I remember looking at the price tag for these platforms and looking at the adoption and impact that they had and just thinking something seemed really, really off. And, one story I like to tell is back when I was at Samsara, my teams would be shipping new AI features, every single week, every single month. And just about every week, I would get pinged by several sellers asking, hey, can you, give me the latest deck on this product that we released? Or what's the pricing? And, things like come and give my team a talk about AI accuracy that I could then use to communicate to customers. And I remember saying, we have all of this information in insert legacy platform name that we're, paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for. Like, well, I don't like going in there. I can't find anything. I'm like, okay, well, can I get a license? And they're like, nope, you can't get a license. It's too expensive. And so I remember just, having a light bulb moment thinking, gosh, something is off if platform is so expensive that you can't get, folks who need access to it. And the folks who do have access don't want to use it. This just seems to be like an area that's ripe for disruption. And so that was the motivation for wanting to rethink and reimagine enablement. And really the, key unlock there was the amazing progress that was made with AI, particularly generative AI. I remember, when the first GPT models came out, there's like a famous example of a paper being accepted into like an academic conference. And I remember then thinking it's an AI generated paper. It was all gibberish, but it sounded like human language. I remember thinking then we're really close. And then I think what kind of really unlocked it were, reinforcement learning with human feedback and like kind of some of the latest developments. And I remember that being the second light bulb moment is, oh gosh, now we have technology that can solve these problems without, having to spend thousands and thousands and sometimes an impossible number of people hours to be able to kind of, you know, um, get personalized training on demand, get personalized content on demand. It's just not scalable, right? And so, kind of those two things together, the AI background and the AI breakthroughs combined with something that like truly felt like it was not serving the purpose in terms of software serving the purpose that people procured it to serve. I think those things coming together was really the moment to want to go off and build Letter.
Yeah. And so walk me through some real life scenarios and use cases of how your customers are using Letter AI.
Yeah, I can take you kind of through the journey of whether it's Novo Nordisk or Ring Central or Plaid or Lenovo, etc. Let's go through the journey of starting as a new person in a revenue organization, right? And it doesn't even have to be a revenue organization, but let's just take that as that's kind of the predominant use case. Within Letter, let's say you start as a new account executive at, let's say Letter. Let's use Letter as an example. And by the way, Letter uses Letter for everything internally, and so this is very much nonfiction. And so you join day one, you get an email from Letter saying, welcome to the team. Here are here's your onboarding journey. And that journey may be composed of, you know, uh, content, interactive learning that you have to go through. That content and learning, by the way, is built using AI. So you're able to build that in a matter of minutes. And that includes a mix of interactive videos that are generated using AI, knowledge checks and questions. Let's say I'm a Spanish language speaking account executive. I can consume all of that content in Spanish or one of 20 different languages. I have a trusty agent that I can access in the platform or via Slack and ask it questions at any point if I get stuck. For example, I'm having a hard time understanding, how learning pathways work in Letter. So I can pop open the agent and ask it to give me what are the core use cases, right? How can I position this to customers? Um, Once I go through my onboarding towards the end, I may have role play sessions where I'm interacting. I'm now practicing pitching Letter, so I can get that hands-on practice without ever having to step into an actual customer conversation, right? And getting many at-bats in a safe place. And this is the real deal. I onboard with Letter in half the time, often less than what it would take with traditional onboarding platforms. I can get on calls more quickly. And now I'm using Letter day in and day out to one, find all the information, all the content that I need as I'm talking to customers. So let's say, now I've finished onboarding, I'm pursuing, Plaid as a customer. In my last meeting with Plaid asked me about our InfoSec reports. I log into Letter. I already have ready for me a follow-up email drafted and links to the content to share, which I can send out. I can take everboarding and, new product releases are launched to me in Letter. And by the way, instead of me having to send this content over as a static attachment, I can build a dynamic share link that has tracking and insights and, analytics. And I can even drop it into a sales room where my customers can collaborate with me and ask content to the questions to the AI agent that's embedded within the platform as well. And there's, a dozen more use cases, but that's just like a quick example of how folks are using Letter. And in terms of the impact, right, we see for the end user, let's say as an account executive, You're able to onboard much more quickly. You're able to find information much more quickly. We found with some of our customers, they were able to use our agent AI search and proactive content surfacing capabilities to find content that would previously take literally hours and hours and hours to find and construct. They can do it in seconds. And so tons of time being given back to do other things. And from an administrator perspective, all this onboarding, all this training that would previously take, and I know this from a personal experience perspective, would take weeks to build. And forget about personalization. That's, darn near impossible. You can do that now in just a matter of, minutes and hours. And that means you can also get stuff out to the field more quickly that's impactful and powerful. So yeah, that's a quick overview of how customers might use and get impact from Letter.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your background as well, your education is this really interesting, rare intersection of philosophy and math and technology. How does your degree in philosophy influence how you build AI products? How do you look at, hallucinations and truth in AI within the large language models, because of your education?
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll have to bear with me. I'll get like really nerdy for just a second. But my interest in machine learning and AI actually started from some of the philosophy, work that I'd studied back in my undergraduate years. And there's a concept in philosophy around like you can either build rules that help you, come to certain conclusions and like describe your worldview, or you can look for patterns. And there was like this movement in philosophy around like there's a famous philosopher, Ludwig Wittgenstein is his name, for folks who are interested for a fun Saturday night read. He has this like notion of family resemblances, which like in a very conceptual way is what AI, essentially is. It's AI isn't, you're not programming AI with a bunch of rules. You're not telling it if, something has four, pieces to it and then something to sit on that's a chair. You're feeding it a bunch of different examples of chairs. And then through pattern recognition, the AI then says, I think that's a chair, and I think that's a table, and I think that's a computer, etc. And so, that was called family resemblance in that work. And so I remember like reading that and thinking, this is before AI kind of blew up and became what it is now, and thinking this has to be the way in which the world works. Like writing rules for things, which is how software was done prior, right? Is just doesn't seem like it's going to build unlock all the important use cases. And so that was a natural segue into how I got super interested in machine learning, got super interested in AI, got super interested in the math behind it. And I think the philosophy education always kept me grounded. This probably sounds paradoxical to say, but in like more practical applications of AI, like kind of thinking about use cases more and like how it impacts human beings versus like getting really deep in the math of it, if you will. And so I think all of those things really kind of prepared me to build something that is kind of using AI as a core building block. I think a lot of the philosophy and math courses that I took really shaped my worldview in terms of how I think about using AI to build things, and just in general like attack gnarly problems, which is the day to day of most founders.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, AI has obviously grown so quickly and is embedded into so much of what you do and what we do across business. When you look at huge customers, and you guys sell to large customers, when you're selling an AI platform to a Fortune 500 company, how has that conversation shifted even in a short amount of time from, I imagine at the beginning, a corporation is saying, boy, is this safe? I don't know, to now they're saying, how fast can we deploy this, right? I'm curious, like, what's it like selling to large companies? What's the biggest mental block that large enterprises still have regarding generative AI?
Yeah. It's really interesting. I think there's, you've probably seen like the adoption curve and, the trough of disillusionment and the, peak hype and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's like a rough approximation of a little bit of what's, going on with AI, where I do think, really the formative moment was around when ChatGPT came out. When ChatGPT came out, that brought AI to the popular imagination. And within a few weeks, AI was a household term. And I think at that point, it was mostly like a lot of consumer interest and tinkering versus can this be used to like solve real business use cases. I think few people, predicted how quickly the models got better and better and better and became very useful at like production grade use cases. And so I think, we went from, I don't think this is production ready to, okay, this is interesting, but we should proceed with caution to, oh my gosh, like my board has a mandate for me to be using AI and every executive in this company is expected within their division to be using AI and every single person who works here is expected to be using AI. Like that sort of transformation that sometimes takes, sometimes decades for some technology cycles, it was compressed within months, and so all of these things changed very, very quickly. And I think today what's happening is folks are generally much more informed, which is fantastic because I think part of what also happened is everybody kind of saw that AI is, where the future is headed, and it's much easier to change, marketing language on the website than to like transform products and offerings. So everybody kind of went and said we're AI native and like where the our platform is agentic and like kind of all these like sort of words got dropped into marketing without the products being transformed. And I think that uh, that got people by for like a couple months, but then I think folks, because the technology is real, folks are very discerning, and I think now buyers are generally very educated around like what's possible and what's not. uh, People can sniff like something that's purely demo or state versus like production grade. I think buyers are getting more sophisticated. You're seeing AI committees form at large organizations, and folks starting to think more about like all the nuances of rolling out AI systems, governance controls, etc. And that's great for us because we've always been a very you know uh, everything is important when you're building a company, but product, you can make like certain optimizations where like you sell in advance of like really having something that solves core use cases. And we've always been the type of company that says we would much rather have, you know, 10 or 15 super happy customers than like 500 so and so or like unhappy customers. And so I think that is now paying dividends, because people are getting more discerning. They are wanting to see the platform in action. They wanting to use it in action. And I think, anyway, that trend I think is a really healthy shift from like just purely being driven by hype.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so many businesses are adopting AI in so many different ways, especially if, when you look at highly regulated industries, call it, healthcare or finance, these
Mm.
hallucinations that can happen in AI are deal breakers, right? How do you guys kind of balance that magic of generative creation with the strict governance that a large enterprise requires? How do you keep AI on the company message?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing is like these are not unsolvable problems, and these are not like insurmountable problems. I think for folks who are deep enough in how these models work, and whether it's parameters for these models or the knowledge that they have access to, or the way in which they're configured and set up, etc. I think there are several techniques that allow you to control hallucinations and incorrect information, etc. And really, it's like a bit of a sliding scale as well, right? So you can make it such that AI close to never like hallucinates, but then you're sort of limiting some of the things that it can do, and then you can kind of put it totally in the other direction. And for us, because we serve enterprise use cases and our customers have us deployed and live with, gosh, like tens of thousands of users globally and using us in multiple different languages, we err on the side of, let's ensure the AI doesn't hallucinate. Let's make sure that we have evaluations internally as we roll out model updates or prompt changes or configuration updates, etc. And so, I think that is a big part of how we do just AI development here. There's a bunch of like human in the loop type of feedback, right? So I'm making sure we're getting feedback from users, and that informs quality and accuracy of AI models. There are, all kinds of like pre and post processing and, during sort of inference kind of steps you can take as well. So a number of different ways in which we can
Hmm.
help control that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so curious on, how a product like Letter AI affects the evolution of the sales rep, right? If Letter AI does
Mm.
its job perfectly, the rep has a super intelligent co-pilot in every meeting. What happens to the role of the salesperson? Does their job become less about, knowing product specs and more about empathy, more about relationship building? I'm curious about the role of the salesperson and how it evolves with years of using a product like Letter AI.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. We're not of the opinion that AI is replacing the sales rep or humans in terms of what they do. We think it's giving them superpowers to focus on the things that really matter, which are relationship building. Um, and so one of our other North Star metrics is, direct selling time, direct customer facing time. How can we give sellers as much of that back as possible and support all the other things, getting information, getting content, getting training, being prepared for that conversation that they're going to have. And so I do think the seller of the future is armed with Letter AI as their AI companion, their AI super powered assistant, and they're spending as much of their time as possible building those relationships and driving empathy with their user base.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you talked about the speed, right, that you're able to offer these teams.
Yeah.
In the old world, right, updating a sales training program for a new product launch could take weeks. You guys are doing it in minutes. When you change
Hmm.
the speed of enablement by that magnitude, how does it change the strategy of the companies that you work with, and does it allow them to launch products differently?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it allows there's a handful of things here, right? So one, I think this goes back to everything we've been talking about is the world is just evolving so quickly with AI, and you need to be able to move fast. And this is more important now than ever. Um, and so one of the great things that Letter does is it gives you those superpowers. So instead of, and again, coming from personal experience, instead of it taking, a quarter sometimes to launch a certification for a new product release, right? Because it requires building the thing, and sometimes you're building videos, sometimes you're doing translations, and you got to get information from 10 different people at the company. Within Letter you can do it in just a few hours and get it out the door. That's the kind of velocity you're able to have, and what that does is it makes sure your field organization is always equipped with the latest and greatest and most accurate information and can move fast. And I think you can also drive competitive differentiation here, right? Like something happens in the market, if you can move faster, and things are happening in the market, right? Especially now, you can move faster than your competitor to make sure that you're staying ahead. So I think that's one. I think a second piece of it is like both through AI workflows and then also just giving folks back the time that they're previously using to build, knowledge checks and, decks and all that other good stuff. What they're able to do now is spend time personalizing and catering to the needs of individuals in a way that wasn't possible before, right? So you're going, even as enablement leaders, you're going from, someone who was previously managing content and managing, training to someone who's managing relationships and really empowering the team to achieve their best, versus all the other things that keep you busy. So I think that's another big thing that we see is enablement teams become much more strategic when they use Letter, than when they're not using the platform. And then I think there's a third piece of it around engagement from field teams and adoption from field teams. This has historically been a huge problem. Um, with some of the traditional enablement platforms is, people go in, they download the thing they need and they never go back. Or they do the training that they need to do and they never go back. And with Letter, we see phenomenal adoption. And a lot of that has to do with, the ability that instead of having to read through a long document or watch through a long video, you can ask your agent the information that you need when you need it. You can ask it to summarize, package it up, right? Things like that. So, yeah, I would say those are some of the shifts that we see happening.
Yeah, awesome. Switching gears a little bit, Letter AI based in Chicago, just like us here at TechNexus, based in Chicago, part of the Chicago tech ecosystem. One thing, one quirk of the Chicago tech community that I've always kind of loved is that like so many of the tech leaders here spent time at the Obama election campaign and the re-election campaigns. So many
Mm-hmm,
the tech founders kind of got their starts there, spent some time there, and then
mm-hmm.
have gone on to build tech companies. You were a part of that campaign team in 2012. How did that experience inform your career or the way you thought about building teams and launching companies?
Yeah, it's a good question. That was a phenomenal crew. Some of the folks there, you probably know a lot of them, were real pioneers. I think Raid Ghani was one of the guys who I think headed up data science, and that's where I saw machine learning in action. Well before it became kind of this, thing you almost take for granted now. And so I think there was a lot of innovation happening there, a lot of really talented folks. I think folks who weren't afraid to, dream big and make mistakes and learn from those mistakes and, just be laser focused on kind of the core objectives, that they set out to do. I think there were a lot of things like that I learned. How to execute well, how to experiment well, and I think there's a lot of just like more tactical things too. There were a lot of like tools that I learned about for the first time, a lot of technologies I heard about for the first time, roles even. I remember, this is went back when I was in college, but I remember like not knowing that a role like a product designer existed. And not every like software technology company at the time had like UX designers or product designers, but it like made me appreciate the importance of things like that, of design and of, applied science and machine learning and all that goes into building, world-class software applications. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton that I learned in that experience.
Yeah, I kind of love that part of Chicago tech lore that like because especially that '08 campaign is
Mhm,
kind of known as like stuff of legend for creating digital tools for campaigns, and I know you guys built on top of that in
mhm.
the 12 campaign as well. Speaking of Chicago, how would you kind of talk about Chicago's tech ecosystem, maybe compared to the Valley, where I know you spent time,
Yeah.
where the coast of New York City as well. How has Chicago's tech community evolved, and how's it been a place for you to build your business?
Yeah, it's great. And, a little bit of background on me. So my family and I immigrated to Chicago. I was around 8 when we moved here. And I, grew up in the city and, went to Chicago public schools, the magnet schools here, went to undergrad at University of Chicago. So, I know the city kind of like the back of my hand, and, love Chicago. I think there's a few things, right? I think on the one hand, like there is a ton of density, both in terms of capital and in terms of companies, and in terms of professionals in the space on the coast, and particularly in San Francisco. And every time I go to San Francisco, it's always such a kick, just like seeing all the startup billboards, right? And you walk down the street, and literally when I take a walk in SF, I run into like 5 people that I know, folks at different companies and things like that. So there's something to be said about SF and, particularly the ecosystem there, and some of the innovation. And just to be clear, also, for Letter, we're a half and half. So we're half in person in San Francisco. All of our engineering team is based out there. And then we're half in person here in Chicago. Go to market, customer success, et cetera, is based out here. I think that being said, Chicago is a phenomenal ecosystem, and there's some incredible folks here, as well. There's some incredible companies here as well. Tempest, Project 44, handful of other like phenomenal tech companies out here. And if you look at some of the schools around here too, engineering talent and sales and marketing talent, there's exceptional folks out here. And I think there's more of like a underdog mindset, if you will, in Chicago. That's like a very healthy, I think it's a healthy driver of like competition and wanting to build something like really exceptional. And so I think, the Chicago ecosystem is one that is, maybe if I were to put it succinctly, maybe doesn't have the density of the coast, but it certainly has a ton of passion. And I think the underdog sort of mindset that folks have here is a really healthy driver to, get them to outcompete their peers on the coast.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. Well, Ali, this has been great. As we wrap up here, let's finish with what's next for Letter AI. You've tackled sales enablement, but presumably, your technology could apply to other areas, customer support, legal, and more. Do you see Letter AI expanding beyond the revenue team?
Yeah, great question. I think for us, we want to go deeper into that family of go to market use cases. So we don't want to be like the everything for everyone platform. And I think what that'll end up doing is diluting the value proposition of what we do. Although we see companies using Letter, company wide for some use cases, like for onboarding and training and, knowledge and sort of intranet type use cases. But, generally speaking, we want to get closer and closer to directly generating revenue for our customers, and becoming like the core product in their revenue stack. And so, that's kind of what we're laser focused on. There are a lot of product implications for that. For us, that means getting closer and closer to helping, revenue teams, whether it's, customer success, having healthy accounts, or it's sales closing accounts, getting closer and closer at making that a reality and, having deal level insights and enablement. Um, and so, that's kind of what we see in terms of how we want to continue shaping the company. And then as far as the future of the company, in an ideal world, we would love to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. We want to build something that really outlasts all of us. And so that's kind of, we don't think about that sort of end state so much. We more think about how do we build something that outlasts all of us. And that's kind of the mindset that my co-founder and I have.
Right on, right on. Well, Ali, this has been terrific. Thanks so much for being a part of the conversation today. It was great to chat.
Yeah, great chatting with you, Jim. Thanks.